And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
And this week we witnessed the runoff election in Georgia for a seat in the United States Senate, ultimately won by Raphael Warnock, the incumbent, over Herschel Walker, the former NFL star. And we observed the anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and as the week was ending, we saw the return of Brittney Griner, the WNBA and former Olympic star, to the United States from a Russian gulag. Now, before we get to that story, I think it is worth mentioning that runoff election down in Georgia was really interesting in its conclusion. With 88% of the vote counted, Herschel Walker was still ahead. Ultimately, the vote total showed that the incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock had pulled it out, but not by a huge margin. And this is Georgia, so you have to wonder whether Stacey Abrams thinks that it was an invalid election. That's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, but if you remember, she lost an election by almost that wide a margin and still hasn't conceded. These are the election deniers we hear so much about. And what's more significant and more serious is that there were record turnouts for this runoff election, in effect, a special election for a U.S. Senate seat. Record turnout. This is under the statute that the left screamed and yelled about a couple of years ago. Move the All-Star game out of Atlanta and over to Colorado because this law that was passed by the Georgia legislature was so horrific and was going to suppress votes. Most ever. Enough said. And by the time we're watching this, Brittney Griner is back on American soil, having put up with a Russian gulag for several months on, some really outrageous sentencing for a relatively minor crime that she allegedly committed while in Russian territory. But there's a lot more to this story, because here is a woman that not that long ago said she would not stand for the national anthem, and in fact wouldn't even take the court while the national anthem was being played because of what a crummy place the United States was to live and work and grow up in. You've got to wonder whether she's now going to be willing to stand with pride for our national anthem after our entire nation rooted for her. Everybody did. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, all wanted her out of Russia. And we paid a pretty high price, trading off a noted thug, one of the worst in the world, and putting him back into the killing game, this Victor Bout that was exchanged for her in a prisoner exchange, and leaving behind Paul Whelan, a United States Marine who's there on trumped-up charges as well and remains in Russian custody. Not a very nice place to be at any time of the year, but especially at Christmas. So welcome home, Ms. Griner. We hope that you will do the right thing and not only stand for the anthem, but tell the world how proud you are to be an American and how great it was to have this nation stand behind you in your hour of real trauma and trouble. And finally, here in Pennsylvania, the putative leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, Joanna McClinton, held a special ceremony this week to have herself sworn in as the majority leader in the House of Representatives. What's really a little curious about that is that the majority leader typically isn't sworn in separate and apart from the rest of the members who won't show up to be sworn in until January, and the fact that there really is no legislature in session right now. The legislature of Pennsylvania goes sine die at the end of November and doesn't reconvene until January. So we have that month of interregnum that she chose to unilaterally call into her own orbit and name herself as the majority leader. What happened on that same day was that there were two resignations adding to the seat vacated by the untimely death of Representative DeLuca. So now the Democrats' mathematical majority is in actuality a minority. So as we predicted last week, the machinations, some will say the games, have only begun. So we'll have to all stay tuned. And speaking of games, look what happened in Major League Baseball this week with $300+ million contracts. I mean, you used to be able to buy a franchise for $300 million. My friend Johnny Callison, who once led the National League in hitting, told me that the most money he ever made playing Major League Baseball, a year when he was an all-star and the Phillies getting this close to going to the World Series with $60,000. Think about that. And today you've got players taking out tens of millions of dollars per season. And Aaron Judge will tell you that it is a good investment. We'll see next season, because we're all looking forward to pitchers and catchers reporting sometime around St. Valentine's Day. In the meantime, we look forward to Hanukkah and Christmas and all of the holiday festivities, and to all a wonderful time of year, because that is the best 60-ish seconds of this week.